House Resolution 578. The gentleman from California, Mr. Campbell, and a member opposed. Each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, this amendment would remove $150,000 of funding for the historic Fort Payne Coal and Iron Building rehabilitation, would lower the cost of the bill by a commensurate amount. The Times-Journal, Fort Payne's local paper, reported on June 9th of this year that the Fort Payne Coal and Iron Building will be renovated into the Fort Payne Culture and Heritage Center. The article goes on to reveal that the city of Fort Payne received a $90,000 grant from the Alabama State Council on the Arts in order to begin construction on this project, which starts this fall. Rehabilitation of the coal and iron building into a cultural and heritage center is the kind of thing that ought to be paid for at a state level or at a local level and by local communities. I applaud the ability of the council to make such a grant given the economic conditions that exist out there, but I question again whether this is one of those things which rises to the level of whether it should have another $150,000 of taxpayer money. Now, let me, Madam Chair, this is the fifth and final of various amendments I have offered on behalf of myself and other members this evening having to do with earmarks. And let me say this. I've heard the passion pleas, and I'm sure I will hear another one, from people this evening about the importance of the project they're talking about, and I understand that. I get that. We all have things we think are important. There are many things that are important, and we won't agree on what they are, but they're out there. But budgets are about making choices. We cannot do it all. And when we do it all, we get into the problems that we are in today. We get into deficits that go on without end, $1 trillion or more. We get into debt that will crush not just our children, but ourselves. We get into spending that rises and rises and rises and won't stop. And there are so many things. I'm sure this project is one of them, and I'm sure that the gentleman from Alabama will make a defense of this project. And his defense may be very legitimate. But there will be similar projects in my district and everyone else's, and then there's a million other things we could do. And what about little things like national defense? What about all kinds of other things that this federal government has to do? Madam Chair, it is time that we look at these earmarks and we look at this spending and we start to make those priorities, and we say this is the amount of money we've got. And we've got to start borrowing any more, and we've got to start pouring it onto our children, and we can't increase the taxes because you'll send this economy into a double-dip recession. And that we set these priorities, and we decide there are certain things that are important and there are certain things that aren't. And Madam Chair, I guess I would just ask, if anybody out there is listening or watching, is the Fort Payne Coal and Iron Building historic rehabilitation, is that a national priority that in these times, that in this kind of deficit, in this kind of spending environment, rises to the level of something that we have to do? Madam Chair, at some point we've got to stop it. I'd like to hope we can begin that process now, and I will reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves the balance. This is the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Aderholt. Rise.
I claim opposition to the in opposition to the amendment.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I just want to thank the chair and the ranking member for their work on this subcommittee bill. As a ranking member of one of the subcommittees on appropriations, I know that the work that goes into these bills and putting them together, and I thank Mr. Dix and Mr. Simpson for their hard work on this appropriation bill. I would like to talk a little bit about this project. It is the amendment that has been brought up tonight by Mr. Campbell is an amendment that would, of course, eliminate funding for this, what I believe is a worthy and historic preservation project. The funding allows the city of Fort Payne, which is a town located in the district that I represent. It's a relatively small town in rural Alabama, to proceed with this rehabilitation project of an important landmark. has been stated, the Fort Payne Coal and Iron Building. Also, it should be noted, Madam Speaker, that this is included in the Save America's Treasure program. Fort Payne was first incorporated as a town in 1889 as investors from New England saw coal and iron opportunities in the surrounding areas. During that time period, this particular building, the Fort Payne Coal and Iron Building, was the first building that was constructed. It served as the administrative building and the headquarters for the Fort Payne Coal and Iron Company, and it was from this building that the city itself was planned. This year marks the 120th anniversary of the building as well as the town of Fort Payne. And this has been a project that has not been, that they are not depending on federal funds alone. And that's, of course, as Mr. Campbell pointed out. The city of Fort Payne in rural Alabama has spent $50,000 of its own money working on this project. The state of Alabama has committed another $135,000 for this project. The Coal and Iron Building will house a cultural center which will serve this region of the state. The building is on the National Register, and it will be a valuable asset to encouraging tourism and raising awareness of the cultural heritage of northern Alabama and southern Appalachia, as it will provide educational opportunities which augment certain other activities in the region.
Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, I will be glad to yield.
I just wanted to say to the gentleman that the committee strongly supports his amendment. We think this is a good amendment. It's well thought out. We like the fact that the city and the state have put up money. It's a real partnership. This is the way we do things today. And the gentleman is a distinguished member of the committee, and we're proud of his good work.
Thank you. I thank the chairman, and I just would also like to point out that Fort Payne, Alabama is a community that tries to reach out and help others. It has a rich history of doing that. It was one time the #1 sock producer in the world, and it's also the birthplace of the country music legends, Alabama. When New York City suffered the terrorism attack of 2001, the sock industry in Fort Payne donated and delivered hundreds of pairs of socks to the rescue workers who were working around the clock in that particular situation. So in closing, Madam Speaker, the restoration and the use of the coal building will be a significant cultural and educational benefit to northeastern Alabama. While I respect the gentleman who has offered the amendment, I would ask the members to vote no on this amendment. And I would like to show a picture of the building. This is a picture of the Coal and Iron Building, and this photo was taken somewhere between 1890 and 1899. And I think you can see that it's a part of American history. And I'd also like to mention, in response to the gentleman from California, is that I'm a strong supporter of defense spending for this country, but this particular project in no way hinders the defense spending for this country. And as you know, he can check my record and see that I'm a strong supporter of national defense for this country. But this is in a different bill completely. This is in a different set of areas of the appropriation bill. So I would like to just stress that to the other members, and I would ask them if they would respectfully could vote no on this amendment.
Is the gentleman reserved?
I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill, this appropriations bill, Interior Appropriations, increases spending from last year by 17%. Now, I would ask how many Americans out there are going to see a 17% increase in their salaries this year? How many companies are going to be spending 17% more on their marketing budget, on payroll, on anything else? And also today, the Congressional Budget Office issued a report on the debt and the deficit, and I would encourage members to read it and look at it. It essentially says that we can't keep it up. It's unsustainable. I'm afraid I don't have time. You have time remaining. That it is basically unsustainable and unsustainable. Madam Chair, I understand this is only $150,000, but the journey of 1,000 miles does begin with a single step. And if we can begin by starting to not use taxpayers' money for charitable contributions, not using taxpayers' money for non-federal priorities, not using taxpayers' money for earmarking to private companies without bids, then we begin that single step. I yield. I'd be happy to yield to the gentleman what time I have remaining.
The gentleman yields the balance. The
I
gentleman
yield to the
reserved.
gentleman from what? Do I have any time?
Yeah, well, I appreciate the gentleman yielding. I just would say to the gentleman, I hope when we get to entitlement reform, where the real money is spent, over 2/3 of the budget is in entitlement reform, that I will see the gentleman from California, the gentleman from Arizona, the gentleman from Texas out here doing their good work on something that makes a difference.
The gentleman from Alabama has 30 seconds remaining.
I yield the time, additional time.
The gentleman is recognized for 30 seconds.
I mean, with all due respect, I mean, the good efforts, I think what the gentlemen have done has led to reform. We have changed the way we operate in the Appropriations Committee. Everything is put on the website when it's requested. All the agencies review this. If it's for profit, it has to be competed. I would say to the gentleman, I think you've done.
Will the gentleman yield on that point? Or, I know it's not your time.
The gentleman's time has expired.
Gentleman,
both sides.
You have the time.
Okay.
All time has expired.
Remember, we're going to vote no on this amendment.
All time has expired. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from California. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, that noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to.
Madam Chair, on that I would ask for a recorded vote.
The gentleman requests a recorded vote. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from California will be postponed.